Hi dear 12th graders, it's time to improve our English skills. I'm Shoshana Vetisyan and today's topic is types of questions. Let's see what we will learn during today's lesson. So we will name the types of the questions, we will know the structures of interrogative sentences, and we will have some practical work. So what is an interrogative sentence? The interrogative sentences ask for request, information, and are punctuated at the end with a question mark. There are the following types of questions: general, special, alternative, and disjunctive. Now let's have a more detailed look at each type of question. So the general questions. This is a question whose expected answer is one of two choices, and one that affirms the question, and one that denies the question. Very often, we call these sentences as yes or no questions, because the answer should be yes, either no. Now let's have a look at some examples. So let's see. Do you like modern architecture? As you see, we have a general question here. So let's have a look at the structures. The first word of this sentence is do. It is an auxiliary verb. So there is a rule that the auxiliary verb comes first in general questions. The second part of the speech is the subject, you in this case. And then comes the verb, the predicate of the sentence. In the second example, the first part of the sentence consists of the word where, which is the verb. So as far as to be is the main verb, the predicate of the sentence, it stands the first. We do the same way with the modal verbs, can, may, must, and so on and so forth. So let's go on and have some practical part. And now let's practice. As you can see, there are 3 sentences given here. The first 2 I have already completed. The third one is your duty to do as a homework, and we will discuss it during our webinars. So let's see the first one. They encounter various issues on their way. This stands for general question. Do they encounter various issues on their way? From our previous grades, we know how to form interrogative sentences of the present simple tense. Therefore, here do helped us to form the interrogative sentence. The other example, she can run a whole company. The predicate is expressed with a modal verb. Therefore, it stands the first in the interrogative sentence. They will be arriving soon. As you can see, there is a blank here. So your duty is to complete this sentence, and the answers will be discussed during our webinars. Let's go on. The next type of the question is the special one, which is, together with the first sentence, are the most popular and most common interrogative sentences in English language. Special questions are addressed to a special member of the sentence. Question words are used to form this type of questions: who, what, where, when, why, which, how many, how long, and so on. If you have noticed, the majority of these question words begin with W and H, and that is why in the grammar literature you may encounter the term WH questions. So this is another name for this type of questions. Let's go on. The structures of this kind of questions. What are the outcomes of this project? As we have already mentioned, special questions begin with the question word. In this case, it began with what. The second word is the verb, the predicate of the sentence, and then comes the subject. Let's have a look at another example. Who did you vote for in the last elections? Again, the question begins with the question word, then the auxiliary verb, the subject, and the verb. So, while forming special questions, after the question word comes either the verb or the auxiliary verb or the modal verbs. So, the question words must precede either the auxiliary verb, the verb itself, or the modal verb. Let's go on and practice. I have been studying journalism for 10 years. How long have you been studying? How long, the question word, stands for 10 years. One more example. The program was launched a year ago. When was the program launched? When stands for a year ago. This participant was the fastest of all. Now it's your time to try to write the special question of the following sentence. Let's go on. The third type of the questions are the alternative ones. Alternative questions present two or more possible answers and presuppose that only one is true. They are made up of two parts, which are connected by the conjunction or. Now let's see how do we form these types of questions. Does she work in the city or in the suburbs? Does stands the first in the sentence, as far as it is the auxiliary verb. Then comes the subject, the verb, and so on. One more example. Who did encourage you? Your parents or your teacher? This is another example of an alternative question. Remember, the first part of these types of questions are formed with the same principle as we did with the special questions and general questions. Let's go and have more practical part again. Are there trains from the airport to the city center? Let's read the alternative question. Are there trains or buses from the airport to the city center? As we can see, we have added buses as an alternative choice in this question. And we have the or connector to join two alternative answers. One more example. He prefers peaceful negotiations. Does he prefer peaceful negotiations or war? Again, we have connected the two alternative choices with the connector or. And the last example, you should try to write by yourself. And now, disjunctive questions. A disjunctive question requires the answer yes or no and consists of two parts: an affirmative statement followed by a negative question or a negative statement by an affirmative question. Now let's discuss some examples. They have been to Japan, haven't they? As we see, the first part of the sentence is affirmative. Therefore, the second part should be negated. And pay attention that the negation should be done with the help of either the auxiliary verb or the verb itself. One more example. She won't be late, will she? And in the second case, we had negative sentence in the first part, and therefore the second part must be affirmative. But before having the practical part, there are some exceptions that are worth paying attention to. Let's read an example. I am right, aren't I? The predicate of the first part is am, but to our surprise, the second part is not formed with am. So this is the exception that we have just to remember. Some other examples that I would like you to listen. Let's go to the beach, shall we? Wait a minute, can you? Have some more rice, will you? Somebody has called, haven't they? There is a mosque in the street, isn't there? Try to remember this. And now the promised practical part. You weren't sleeping, were you? As we can see, the first part is negated. And therefore, in the second part, we cannot negate. Were you? The second example. Let's hit the road early in the morning, shall we? Yes, you are right. This is among those exceptions. Try to remember. There are two more examples that you should try to write by yourself. They will be arriving soon, and I'm the fastest of all. Try to write the tail part of these questions by yourself. Now let's finalize today's lesson. Today, we have learned the types of the questions. We have learned the structures of interrogative sentences, and we have done some practical work. So this much for today's lesson. Thank you for your attention, and see you again next time.